Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox. And today we are up for a series of inspirational stories that were created in collaboration with Kaunas Tech Park, that's located in Lithuania. And I had a few conversations with the local founders and investors, and few of them will be shared here because I find it's very relevant if you're into the markets and want to know what's happening in Lithuania, which is my home country. I think, you came to the right place. And these are the series in partnership with Kaunas Tech Parkas. And today we're going to dive into the first one. And the first story that you're going to hear is with Victoria Trimble, who is very known in not only the Baltic region, but also this whole European investor region. She is a managing director and investor at Coinvest Capital. And we sit down with her during the hackathon that was happening in Kaunas and explored basically what she does with the fund and her approach towards entrepreneurship. So tune in and let us know what you think. Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Zivile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox. This is Zivile, and today, live from Kaunas Tech Park, I'm here with Victoria Trimble, who is an investor at Coinvest Capital, and came here as a jury member to help choose the best pitch competition winners from the hackathon that has been happening over this whole weekend here in Kaunas, where the science meet the technology and innovation and entrepreneurship. Welcome, Victoria.
Hello, Zivile. Hello, everyone.
How are you today? How is your morning? Besides that, it's sunny.
It is very sunny, and we're in Lithuania. We really need that sun. I was just having 3 days of vacation, also in a bit more sunny and a bit more warmer place. But coming back to the sun, really, I feel somewhat, it will probably divert, but like a couple of years ago, we had the statistics. Only 5 hours per month of January sunshine. That was too little. So today is a great day.
I do recall that. I skipped that January of darkness in Europe, so I was like, okay, cool. I'm happy. Anyway, so tell me, I guess it's a good way to start our conversation. What brings you here to Kaunas today?
Well, the hackathon brought me today. I will be partnering on quite a few events with Tech Park, and it's a pleasure to join, to see the pitches, to see the teams, because we, as VC investors, we expect that at least some of those teams will continue doing the business, developing the ideas that they created through the hackathon, and it's always interesting to see the talent, to see them early. We kind of focus on early stage investment. That's, I would say, even the design of our VC fund is more tailored to early stage, to high risk, and also to the areas which requires capital. And when I looked into the challenges of today's hackathon, so there are life science solutions, AI-based, location-based solutions, some deep tech startups I expect to see, but I don't know what the teams will present. So those pitches will be new to me today. So, these are the areas what we look into. And just maybe very briefly, I could tell, because even like yesterday, we spoke with one investor. He said that you have such an investment arrangement incentive that nobody knows enough about it. And, for me, sometimes it seems that I'm already talking on every corner. But in fact, Coinvest Capital has the best in the world profit sharing incentive for private co-investors. Mm-hmm. And especially for spin-offs from universities, how it works. When we invest in the profit sharing incentive, we cap our returns at 4 or to 8% per year. Exit if we succeed together with everyone. We only keep our profits under that cap and transfer all the surplus to private co-investors. So we have a real case example. Interactio, first exit from the fund, we invested 1 million, exited after 1.5 years at 9 times. That's already a really great result. And because our share in the round was high, we could go up to 75% versus accredited investors. In that case, our cap was 6%, and we transferred all the surplus to private investors. So they made not 9 times, but 34 times.
Oh, wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, that's a big number. I think this was one of the reasons also behind the quite explosive pickup of the business angel ecosystem in Lithuania. I'm also board member of Lithuanian Business Angels Network, where we unite, train, have a deal flow with private investors. And still, if you look into Lithuania, overall financial literacy, things are improving, but there is still a big way to grow. Just to look into the capital structure. So at the end of December, we were 27 billion euros of private resident money in current bank accounts and term deposits, with barely earning anything, above inflation. Add to that 11 billion from private companies. So that is capital, which is basically sitting and losing value. I don't say that all of that should go to startups, because this is a very high risk asset class. And like traditional, if you look into the global asset allocations, that's usually from 5 to 8% of total investable capital. So just taking those percentages, it will be 22 times per year than currently is invested in early stage. So there are still a lot of opportunities, and we invest in public funds. We are sovereign VC, so we facilitate and encourage and de-risk private investors to start investing, to continue investing. And when people ask me, what's your job? I have this saying that I hunt unicorns and breed angels. And also it was very funny when an investor asked me, so why you are hunting unicorns? We have very few of them, I said, I hunt them not to kill, but to raise, to help them grow. And breeding angels is with reference to the profit sharing incentive, because our expectation is that after successful exit, getting extra incentive, they will reinvest again and again. Because again, if you look into the ecosystem and compare to Estonia, for example, so they had Skype. After Skype exit, you got a lot of high net worth individuals with startup experience. In Lithuania, we have nice stories already. We have unicorns, but we don't really have exits. Exit per se is Mailer Lite, $1 million. I know that company very well. And they bootstrapped without any VC investor. Funny enough, 12 or 15 years ago, when I was doing M&A, they were my clients. I found them two investors based on the criteria, what we were looking for, and advised them not to take any investment.
Why did you advise them not to take investment?
Well, at that moment of the time, I think these were more like sharks than investors. And what I mean is, they don't even believe in the business model, and they wanted to take a control. So this is something also an advice to startup founders, especially those who are not experienced, like really don't rush to dilute yourself. And, even, the show that we have, the Shark Tank equivalent in Lithuania, I think it's a very nice show per se. And I looked, the first series together with ecosystem that unicorns arranged, and then looked at couple series later online. So I think it's a very great show, but you also have to understand that this is a show, and you should understand the rules of the show, and don't mix up it with the actual investment process and the actual investment rules. And with all due respect, if the founder gives away, 30, 40 or even more percent for a small amount, yes, we see investors, we call it ruin table, and we don't invest. That makes companies not investable. Probably the largest extreme, what I saw was, there was a very interesting company I saw pitching on the stage in Life Sciences Baltic event last or 2 years ago in the autumn. So the scientist, she was presenting. I thought that this is an interesting case. I came to her to talk over coffee break. And, she being, the main kind of founder in our jargon, the main IP, holder developer, she had only 1%.
No way.
So, that was it, there is no way, no room to discuss. Unless, again, we had a case where original, let's say, financial investor agreed to reduce the stake and to increase the stake of the actual founders. But these are very difficult conversations. And I remember another investor who kind of came, said, well, I have a startup, would you like to invest? And, he invested quite a small amount, and he has already 60%. And I said, unless you agree to adjust capital structure, we cannot do the deal, because the main founders are not motivated enough. And when I also asked, so why did you take so much control? He said, I needed control. Well, you should not mix up control with ownership, because you could get control through shareholder agreement, through all sorts of decision-making instruments. So, this is probably, the key, lesson, advice, especially for young founders, to really be thoughtful of your cap table, to be thoughtful of, how you see your startup developing. Because if your business model requires several rounds, diluting yourself too early might make your company simply not investable.
So what would be the decent amount of percentage to give away on the first round of investments in the pre-seeders?
Again, it depends on valuation, depends on stage, whether you have revenues or not. And you can easily find online on LinkedIn, like Carta has a lot of data.
Yeah.
That data is primarily on US, but, it's still, percentage-wise rather universal. I would say 10 to 15%, max. Could be smaller, could be larger. Again, it really depends on so many, items that you can't say that this is like a hard rule. But, these are the ranges. You could always see, how a market is developing because, again, markets go in cycles. There are cycles when there is ample money and that's a seller's market. There are cycles when money is scarce or, let's say, more risk averse, and then it's, a bias on the market. So sometimes it's also like the timing issue. So... Yeah.
Absolutely. Have you ever invested into the team that's solving really, really relevant problem? They're making money, but you can see that the dynamics in the team are a bit of shaky?
Well, at the moment of investment, we have reasons or, let's say, assumptions to believe that we will succeed. And when we invest early stage, we invest in the teams, first of all, and we try to assess their interdynamics. There are some funds who, let's say, would not invest in a single founder. We acknowledge that there is a single founder risk. At the same time, sometimes we have the strength of being single founder. So we don't eliminate, we look case by case. We assess that as a risk and then you quantify and we make decisions. So when we make investment decisions, we believe that we will succeed. At the same time, we know the brutal statistics that at least 9 of 10, will not survive. Later, it really depends. We saw different dynamics. We saw really very, very different cases ranging from, all sorts of extremes. But, we handle that case by case.
How much is it for you data and how much is it for you gut feeling?
Early stage, when it's pre-revenue and sometimes pre-prototype, there is no really data per se. I have a saying that you can torture Excel, but, even if you don't, have inputs yet. I would say 70% is based on the team, 40, 30. I mean, these are ranges, product, market potential, numbers at that early stage. Again, if there are sales, of course, if there are profits, and everything is fine, but usually it's the team and the product. And in the ideal case, we would like to see the team of at least 3 founders with complementary skill set, because if you have 3 engineers, that's not a balanced team. That's a strong engineering team, but they might lack sales, finance. And again, if you are very, very early stage, so we want founders to focus on designing, developing the actual product or service, rather than, let's say, write 20 corporate policies. And even though, certain things are like hygiene factors and you have to have it, but if you have complementary skill set, it's always a better case.
Absolutely. So since we're here in this beautiful city of Kaunas, all about science and tech, where do you stand in the startup map when it comes to the deep tech startups?
I think that we as Lithuania and also Europe has very large potential. The question is whether we can easily materialize that potential. And you know what I mean? There are so many factors at play. And I've been speaking recently at one international conference, like American ecosystem versus the European ecosystem. Probably one thing is that we don't have European identity. We have national identities. So although we would like to say European, there are borders, there are cultures, there are languages. So there are legal barriers and natural barriers. And on one hand, after Draghi report, which was one of many wake-up calls in different fields. So there is this initiative of European Commission to create so-called 28 regime, EU Inc. This is a very nice idea. We'll see how that will result in the practice, because let's look into the example of European companies. There is a concept designed for large corporates, for also pan-European structures, but eventually there is still a requirement to have a physical address. And you end up in certain jurisdiction because you need a physical address in certain jurisdiction. And then, you have local laws that are not yet fully harmonized. So opportunities are there. The question is how quickly we will be able to create decisions. Another probably aspect in Europe is overall, if you look into the capital market structures, it's not exactly European, I would say more like Anglo-Saxon and, other European, it's debt markets predominantly. Banks have very strong role, especially in Germany. And we in Lithuania, one of the reasons why I believe our capitals markets have not developed that fast is because we had ample, cheap bank capital available. So from the business perspective, if you can get easily a bank loan at, couple percent, why to dilute? But that's again not unique to Lithuania. That's quite a predominant funding model in Europe. So therefore, our VC capital is not that developed as in United States. Like governments, they try to facilitate, especially early stage, by creating all sorts of structures, being LPs in many VC funds. This is, I believe, a great idea to kickstart the ecosystem. At the same time, politicians should be able to look beyond the physical borders of smaller countries, because usually when you have public capital in your structure, you have limitations by geography. Limiting yourself to a small geography does not really create the value, because you might have a small base to select from. And still, venture capital is a selection. It's not like, you give money to everyone. You have to be selective. You have to pick up the best teams and trust in them, bet in them. So there are different designs. And that's why, again, I believe that what our holding is doing, and the design of our VC fund is very good in that respect, because although we are 100% funded by European or state capital of Lithuania, we never invest alone. So we always have private market participants co-investing directly into the startup. So this is also the justification that the market also believes in the company. I don't even want to start, speaking about perceptions, public sector, private.
Oh, yeah.
My background is private, my mindset is private. So the source of capital doesn't impact the way how we make decisions. It's just, certain mandate limitations. But again, our mandate has been expanded in November, and previously we were limited only to invest in companies that are registered in Lithuania at the moment of investment. They could later transfer to other countries, and Walk15 has a very successful subsidiary or daughter company in Germany. We also opened in the US. We have 2 UK companies in our portfolio, are looking at some other jurisdictions. So we now the mandate permitted later to grow abroad if that requires business-wise. From November, we can also invest in companies that are registered in European Union, as long as they bring value for Lithuania. And bringing value for Lithuania is rather broad definition. If we will hire our talent, that's the most easiest direct way, but there are other ways to prove it. And we're already looking at a couple companies like that. Moreover, based on this change, I still can't mention the names, but we recently had an international call for new investment committee members, and we really attracted 121 really very qualified person from 36 countries and all continents except Antarctica. And now we already got the final 3 approved by the board, but now, compliance, background checks, procedures are taking place. So when we will complete those procedures, I think that would be a very, very nice, very worthy, very interesting story to share. And that would also give new access to international network through them. We are also building kind of advisory board concept also. So that will enable our startups, our portfolio companies to grow faster. This is the idea behind it. I'm genuine believer that we need to build more international relationships, contacts, and that's the way to grow.
I couldn't agree more. With all the international, especially partnerships, it also encourages us to build bigger, think bigger, and learn from each other. But now, talking about learning, we are at Tech Park Kaunas, right? A hackathon is happening. It's all about the talent here, about the spin-off. Many people who are participating are still in their university programs. What brings you here? It's your 2nd year in a row, if I'm correct, in this program, or even more. You mentioned that you are collaborating with the educational institutions. So what kind of value?
Maybe the hackathon the 2nd time, but, I wasn't really counting that way, because there are all sorts of different programs hosted here by Kaunas Tech Park, also the Defense Hackathon that we help Refillment Union and Kaunas Tech Park to organize. So it's just important ecosystem in Lithuania. So, we have Vilnius strong ecosystem. We have Kaunas very strong ecosystem. Ecosystem in Klaipėda is picking up. So this is what brought me. Now, here we have technological universities, life sciences, engineering, robotics. A couple of our portfolio companies are, in fact, based in this building. So that's why I came here. I mean, yeah, I could have spent my Saturday doing something else. I took my time to continue working. That's work for me. But at the same time, I just, I have curious mind. Probably that's, the question. It's very, very meaningful to kind of give back, contribute your time, your comments. For students, I've been speaking, I don't remember whether it was in Vilnius or Kaunas universities, especially with medicine, with life sciences. We have one thing that I call the curse of a professional. So to study medicine in Lithuania, you really have to be a nerd, like top student in the school, top student in exams, student in a very, very complex topic, medicine, which often makes people perfectionist. And the mentality of perfectionist is different from the mentality of entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs start to founder, they must reiterate very often. They cannot sit in the laboratory while they will develop something super perfect. They need to test and try, talk to the market, talk to the real potential clients, get the feedback, make a change. Don't fall in love with your product, that it's unique. If you want to solve a real problem, make sure that the problem is real. So, this is probably, one of the main things that we often see in scientific startups, with perfectionism that doesn't help to build business. Other things, teamwork is important, feedback, now the jury, again, I have another saying, which is a bit like calamburas in Lithuanian, that, we have stages, hackathons, accelerators. I call that, we're playing with ponies here. Shadows, rainbows, mentoring, porting, encouraging, tapping on the shoulder. This is very much needed because it's a very tough job to be an interpreter. Entrepreneur, it's not just, yachts, fancy cars, and the investors' money. It's 24 hours of stress and the risk and uncertainty. But, then later when we come to VC funds, we start asking tough questions, and I call it that, this stage is where we train those ponies to jump over the hurdles. And the strongest, the fittest, they will be the ones who will become, unicorns. So even when, the commission, usually at hackathons, the jury, we try to be very cautious with our comments and questions. We want them still to be encouraging. Even, if you will hear something that might sound, like critical, my advice would be not to take us personally. And also, have a kind of, have a skin, because as a startup founder, you will have no so many times. You have to learn to deal with rejection. And if you really believe in your idea, just to push forward, because it won't be easy. I mean, there are success elements, of course. But usually it's discipline, effort, energy, resilience, ability to manage different opinions, make your own decisions, because nobody knows better than you what you are doing. So again, this criticism should not stop you, and at the same time should not pull you in 10 different directions.
Wonderful. I could not imagine a better way actually to end this episode. Victoria, thank you so much for joining Perception Paradox, for sharing your experience, wisdom, and overview. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it was Victoria Trimble from Coinvest Capital and Zivile from Perception Paradox. And thank you for listening today, and see you next time.